Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to look back over all of the action. And we obviously weren't transfixed to one of the great World Cup finals of all time.
What's that? Well, what's been going on, Dan? Anything?
Some football game.
Some football match. Well, I mean, we were all eyes on Pons Forge,
Obviously.
obviously. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
This is a labour of love.
indeed.
No distractions, none.
None whatsoever.
Well,
Right.
Matthew Patrick. Somebody, never mind.
Did he? Oh, I missed that
Yeah,
bit. I missed that bit. I did see a good basket from LVC Dusha, though.
yeah, for 2 minutes to go on the
Yeah.
steps. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right. So let's get on to the basketball. We'll start in Europe on Wednesday night, where Turk Telekom Ankara beat the London Lions in the Euro Cup 102-74. No Taylor yet for London. Tyreek Jones, who was missing last week for Turk Telekom, was back this week, and they actually started the game really well here. London, they led for much of the first half, and they look like continuing the great form we've seen from them in recent weeks.
Yeah, they did actually. And you're trying to figure out why and what was the kind of the natural order of things. Are they actually playing at that level, or Ankara out of rhythm or whatever? But what struck me just looking at them, every game in the BBL this season, they've outsized their opposition, they've out-athleted their opposition. And in this game, it was the other way around. There were some NBA athletes on the Turkish team. The big guy in the middle, whose name I forget.
Sestina.
No, the American guy.
Jones, Tyreek Jones.
Yeah. Just an incredibly athletic, shot changing individual. One step up even on what the Lions have got, and they're getting good stuff from Kufos in Europe, really helping them. But I thought as the game wore on, the difference in the guard play made a difference. Luke Nelson actually ran the screen and roll really well early on, and they got some looks down the middle off the screen and roll off his passing. But when Ankara tightened up on that, and then the ball's going to go somewhere else instead of to the roll man, everything kind of slowed down a little bit, and they didn't have any real athleticism on the wing to create the shots. So I thought the athletes won out in the end.
Yeah.
In this game, the Oni obviously, will be playing, and the Oni is one of the athletes who they need. I imagine Taylor will have the ball in his hands a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say Taylor in the pick and roll as well will give them some options,
because it's not the first option. The first option is fine, but they're going to take that away, and then you've got to get the guys on the wing, the ball in positions where they can either attack or they can shoot, and I thought it was a little bit, once the first option went away for London offensively, I thought it became a little bit of kind of your turn, my turn. We'll throw the ball at the wing, and and at that point they don't have an athletic advantage anyway. Even Decker on the screen roll, yeah, but Decker on the wing with the whole defense in front of him, that's tough. Zubcic isn't a guy who's got a athletic advantage other than maybe in the post for his size, but that's not what they're running. And the one and Huban as well. So the kind of the one weakness that the other weakness that they have, apart from the perimeter defense that we've talked about before against high level shooters, is that kind of athleticism to get a bucket at that really high level. And I thought they struggled with that. And once they struggled, and the Turkish team kind of put their foot down a little bit and put the foot on the pedal.
I was doing a different Euro Cup game on Wednesday night, and I actually had this on in my little booth while I was waiting for my game because it was a later tip off.
You've not got a big booth yet, or even a corner.
No, not for the Euro Cup. If you go upstairs to the EuroLeague booth,
you get the hanging gardens of Babylon.
Well, not quite that, but
herds of wildebeest going across.
They're a little bit bigger. That's as well. But it was actually the last 3 minutes of the first half that made me go, oh no. And they were only down 4 at half time, but just in my head the game had shifted. And it was like, I'm not sure this is retrievable here. And then Telekom went and scored 22 of the first 30 points in the second half, and it wasn't retrievable.
Yeah, I didn't watch the fourth quarter of this game because the game was done. It was a 20 point game. It's tough. I mean, getting to Ankara from London, it's not easy, and doing all that stuff that you're doing, and then to be down players as well. The better matchup, I mean, the more accurate assessment, I think, as to where they are will be when they play them at home.
Yeah,
and they've got maybe the full group there. But certainly it was an eye opener. It was a little bit of an eye opener for me as well, because that was a different level of athleticism that I've seen in any of the Euro Cup games so far.
Well, to give some context to Turk Telekom, they are 9-1, or they were playing today. I haven't seen the result. They were 9-1 going into this game, top of the BSL in Turkey, which is one of the best leagues in the world.
Yeah.
They were tied first with Fenerbahce, who they beat at the Ulka Sports Arena last weekend. So they won away at Fenerbahce last weekend. And Fenerbahce, by the way, are top of the EuroLeague. So that's...
Yeah. How are they doing in Euro Cup?
A good team.
A couple of games in Euro Cup.
Yeah, they have lost. They lost last week. I did their game last week. They lost, but Jones didn't play.
Right.
And again, it's one of those things that if not everybody's there, you can get beat, can't you?
And on top of that, they ultimately they're not. The stakes aren't great.
Yeah.
No, 8 out of 10 go through, and they're going to be in the 8 out of 10. And
the one thing though is, if you can get at the top end, certainly top 4, but if you can get right at the top, you can give yourself home tie all the way through. Because it is the better seeding gets the home tie all the way through, and they're single eliminations once you get to the knockout stage, so that really matters.
That's pretty important. Yeah.
So Nate Sestina had 20 points, Duran Grant 18 points, 9 assists, Erkan Yilmaz 15, 6 and 6. They were 14 of 30 from the 3-point line, and they had 15 guys score 13.
And it comes from being able to create, it comes from being able to create. You've got to find a way of getting that advantage, and then you maximize the advantage by moving the ball. And you have commentators like yourself, will always talk about great ball movement, but the great ball movement always comes off the advantage off the screen and roll when you haven't got a man in front of you, and you draw another player, and then you pass it to the open guy, and then he passes it to the open guy, and he passes it to the open guy. You can move the ball as much as you want, but if you just got a defender standing in front of you, it doesn't matter. It accomplish anything. So it's that point of advantage which is the key, and I don't think London had enough of that in this game. They just didn't. And eventually those threes, a lot of them were corner threes, and Grant got whatever threes he wanted, because I remember him now, given that he was an NBA player, wasn't he? And he got open looks, and they got them from 2 or 3 passes around the corner, and eventually that just wears you down, that advantage off the dribble that they had. London kind of tried to counteract that by throwing it inside more, by getting the ball inside a little bit more. That's tough for 40 minutes, because you're putting a heck of a wear and tear on your big guys to do that, and also you've got to keep throwing those passes, and as you do it, the opposition becomes more and more aware of what you're doing, so there's more hands in the passing lane, and it's harder to make that extra pass to get the ball to where it needs to go. And then obviously if you throw a turnover into a big man, generally it's a fast break.
Decker with 27 and 6, Kufos 13 points. They only had 2 guys at 13 or more, and they were 3 of 19.
Decker was playing his old team, wasn't he? So he was always
yeah. So let's move to the BBL action on Friday, starting in Newcastle, where the Eagles were beaten 87-91 by the Leicester Riders. No Mockford for Newcastle, no Mackenzie or Washington for Leicester. Bit of a disjointed start, this one, although Leicester got their first 7 scores, all but one was a layup, and the one was a dunk, and they scored 10 in a row and led 14-4.
Yeah, Ubiara wasn't playing either, so there was...
Oh, Ubiara. I knew there was somebody else, and I hadn't got it down. So.
It was. And it was sadly redolent of the last couple of games at the Virgin Motors Arena, whereby, for whatever reason, Newcastle haven't started well. Reasons in this game, they started Everett, tried to force him the ball, clearly trying to get something out of him, trying to get him going. Made a couple of plays, but also a turnover, a couple of air balls. But more worryingly, I thought, with both Everett and French in their game, The transition defense was awful. So riders were able to get out and, as you say, make layups, and primarily in transition early on. There didn't seem to be, I'll be honest, Newcastle at this point 3-11, 3-10 on the season, if you include the cup game. They didn't, if you're 3-10, you can't be giving teams the limited amount of respect that they seem to be giving teams, because they're not guarding them the way they need to, and they're not playing with that level of desperation. And certainly they weren't in the first quarter. And it's the same when they played against Cheshire, when you guys had it on Sky. They weren't playing with that degree of desperation, which meant that in desperation, it doesn't mean throwing yourself on the floor straight. I mean, desperation means getting back a step quicker. It means shouting a bit more at your teammate. It means communicating defensively. It means getting your hand on a rebound. It means knowing your assignments and knowing who is not going to score on you and who is, all of that stuff. And I didn't see any of that in the first quarter. And it was a bit of a procession, to be honest. Every shot Newcastle made was a tough shot. Every shot Leicester made appeared to be a rhythm shot. Now, Leicester had been on a bus for 6.5 hours. Right, they got that. Well, he said 7. I don't believe that. It's like if I'm representing somebody at court and I'm a witness who says he had 4 pints in the pub, everybody knows that means 8. No, so whatever. When we went to Leicester, we always leave about 1 o'clock, so that would get us there in time. So if they Leicester play after 12, fair enough. But they've been on the bus a long time, and the reality is that that's a massive advantage of playing Newcastle on a Friday night. And the advantage it's a disadvantage when you have to go and play your second game on the weekend every. But the advantage is your Friday night game, and the travel and the A1 and all that stuff. And the advantage is generally gleaned, in fact, always gleaned in the first quarter when when a team might be cold, team might be a little bit out of the rhythm, a little bit out of sync, and they're trying to work themselves into the game. And that didn't happen. And there was no pressure exhibited on Leicester to do that. So Patrick Whelan basically ran this game. He was as comfortable as, he was noticeably a level above in relation to his level of comfort in relation to the shots that he got, his ability to knock shots down. And I'm afraid the inability of some of the Newcastle players who were guarding him to actually believe that he was going to knock those shots down, because they didn't do enough to take them away. So it was,
commentators had great faith in him. They were like, he's never going to miss.
Right, fortunately, I say fortunately, unfortunately, I don't get to listen to it. So the game turned a little bit when, not a lot, but a little bit, when the Eagles came with their bench. It enabled them to score the ball a little bit better. Again, Darius was quite impactful, and he's basically holding some of those guys together at the moment. But even then, Leicester were playing with guys. Evan Walsh has hardly played all season. Right, and he comes into the game and he looks like he's never missed a beat. As I say, Pat Whelan just knocking down shots here, left, right, and centre. They're playing at times without a point guard, because with Thornton off the court, they haven't really got a point guard on the court, which is a time that you have to put pressure on them. And Newcastle, for the first half, to be blunt, weren't very smart, weren't very focused. There was a lot of kind of pouting going on, and you thought it was a procession. And I thought it was going to be a procession, and it was only kind of the runs that they made, which allowed it to, and almost Leicester were playing cat and mouse. I thought Leicester would game comfortably.
So most of the game, Leicester were up low double figures. So as you say, there was an occasional run where they'd get it down to 6, 7, 8 or something, and then it'd go back to 12 or 13. And really, that was the pattern of the game. So might as well spin it forward to the end.
Just on that though, we'll see. It's small. These games are small margins, right? The end of the second quarter, Newcastle have the ball, 24 seconds to go. 24 seconds, shot clock's off, literally 24 seconds, right? Leicester go into a zone, in that zone befuddle Newcastle at times. Donovan Johnson knocks down a foul line jump shot with 10 seconds to go. Zach Jackson comes back up the court, walks and knocks down a 3-point shot. Somehow Newcastle managed to lose the last 24 seconds when they had the ball by a point. Right, just an absolute indicative of basically even shooting that shot is a losing play. You don't shoot that. It's a losing play. Whether you make it, whether you don't make it, you have to. They have to understand the little things which make it help you win games. And that extra point was pretty critical near the end. And it could have been an extra point, but if they'd moved the ball a bit more and got a shot with 3 seconds to go, then it goes in. That's an extra 2 points. And 3 at Leicester. So instead of losing by 1, that could have been a 3-point, 4-point swing. And little stuff like that is, whilst the team is trying to figure itself out, and the coach is trying to figure out which of his players has got it up here to make the right plays at the right time. So moving on to 4. If you move it on for us.
So French fouls out with 5:42 to go. It's 74-80. They make 2 free throws. So it's
just on that, I'm going to say I thought the refs really struggled refereeing the big guys in this game, both ways. I looked at the fouls at the end. Loving had 4 fouls, and there was one in front of me which was pretty soft. Nelson Henry had 4 fouls. French had 5 fouls. One of them was on an illegal screen called by the referee the furthest away from it. And his third one was, as I say, pretty soft as well. And I think Donovan Johnson eventually fouled out, and we'll get to that in a minute. And just watching a lot of games around the league, and there is an inconsistency in relation to refereeing big guys and how they do it. I saw. French actually is a positional defensive player. Nelson Henry is a positional defensive player. Then, having watched a little bit of French, I'm quite he doesn't, he's not been committing Donovan Johnson like fouls. It's not. Loving in particular is a very, very sensible, smart defensive player. And I just watching as this game went on, I got very frustrated with the relatively minor level of contact that was being called, if any, down there.
So here's one for you, which I'm interested in then. Because 3:36 to go, Hamlet makes a floater, 80-84, cuts it to a 4-point game.
Hamlet got going in the second half for it, to be fair. He really
just before that, there was a play where Johnson appeared to me to knock Nelson Henry to the ground on the previous rebound. And I thought I saw a replay on YouTube from the baseline camera, which made it look fairly obvious. But unfortunately, the YouTube replay, for some reason, it was being blocked. So I could only watch on Synergy, and you couldn't really tell from the main angle whether it was a foul or not. I don't know if you had a better angle on it.
It would have been in front of me.
He basically got a rebound, and he just sort of turned in. It looked like to me. And as I say, there was a baseline camera angle that made it look like he knocked it. And the referee looked at Nelson Henry as if to say flop. And I was thinking,
well, the first play of the game, they warned Cohen for a flop when he got submarined on a 3-point shot. And in my view on flops is that they just guess. They haven't got a clue. And what frustrates me about the flopping rules is that referees don't necessarily accept that there can be contact where people fall over. There can be defense where people fall over, or an offensive player can land and fall over without trying to con them. I've been around players a long time, and very, very rarely have I come across players, particularly offensively. Now, when you're taking the charge, obviously you exaggerate. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen; it does happen. But a lot of the other stuff. I do remember that play, and watching it in front of me, I didn't immediately think offensive foul.
Okay.
Now I might have had my specs on at that point.
Because
it was close, but I didn't immediately think, we got away with one. Then I think what happened was there was some contact, but I didn't think it was with an arm. I thought it was kind of a shoulder, and I think Darren Nelson Henry fell down probably in two motions. So kind of he fell down, then he tripped over. He fell backwards and he tripped over his own feet to fall over, which probably made the ref think that it was kind of.
It'd be interesting, as I say.
I haven't seen the game back.
I turned the game on because our game finished before this one down at Sky. So it was a 2-point game, 3-point game, whatever it was. And I was like, I'll watch the last couple of minutes of that while we go off air. And as I say, there was a replay from the baseline, but I couldn't watch it back because it wasn't on YouTube. So anyway, let's move on. Out of a timeout, a Riders turnover on a bad pass. Newcastle come the other way. Hamlet drive. Nelson Henry's 4th foul. He goes 1 for 2. It's 81-84.
Yeah, I was at the far end for that. I didn't see that call, but Nelson Henry didn't look very happy with it, and I'm not sure that he looked like he got It was one of those ones where I think he blocked it from kind of behind, and again, you know, I think when, and I might be entirely wrong about this because I didn't have an angle on it, I haven't seen it back. But I do think, you know, the refs, you know, if once the player gets into their shooting motion, right, and once they try and make a play, if you've got a big guy who's making a play and makes a play on the ball, then there may be a little bit of contact down below, right? But if that contact down below is incidental, and in particular, if it is either during or after the block of the shot or the challenge of the shot, you shouldn't be calling it. Now, if it's before the block of the shot and it changes the shot and makes it easier to do it, fine, call it. But there's a lot of this, you know, I mean, I don't mind, you know, I prefer that occasionally, you know, some of these guys were allowed to play.
Yeah.
I thought in this game they weren't. I thought it was just very, very touchy-feely around the basket indeed. And there's some big guys and they're playing physically, and as I say, there weren't the fouls that I did see on both sides. I didn't consider them to be particularly obvious.
So loving their misses along too. Cohen misses a 3, but Eagles managed to scramble an offensive rebound, and Johnson was underneath for an easy layup.
Yeah. Cohen was very competitive in this game in the second half. He really began to look like somebody who's kind of leading the team. And Johnson, and you know, Newcastle's interesting because, you know, Kennedy sat down in this game, didn't play at the end. Everett only played 6 minutes. And French fouled out. So, you know, it was basically, you know, you're playing 7 players in this game, which is far better than the 10 he's had to try and figure out how to play before. And I thought it aided their consistency. That the numbers that the players that they had were down. It also meant that some of the other guys have to step up. And that also helped Hamlet get going as well. But yes, it was a 1-point game, and it's like, oh my goodness.
2:39 to go, 2:20 to go. Thornton called for an offensive foul again, and it was one of those that
was in front of me. That was in front of me. It was a good call. Cohen got there and he extended his arm. It was literally right in front of me. Rob weren't very happy about it, but for that one, I had a better angle than Rob.
There's only the one angle on the Synergy, and it was one of them where I watched it back and I was like, that could be either way. So he then came out of the game. I didn't know if it was a cut or an injury. There was clearly something with his hand or his arm or something, because he asked for it and he went to the end of the bench. And then Walsh comes in for him. 2:04 to go. Hamlet cuts to the basket, 85-84, and that's Newcastle's first lead since 2-0.
Yeah, 2 minutes too early.
Yeah.
I didn't 2 minutes too early, because what happened then was a microcosm of a winning team playing against a team that's losing. Because Leicester made every play they had to make last 2 minutes, starting with, you know, Zach Jackson offensive rebounding.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, just.
Or he would have been offensive rebounding it were it not for Johnson easing him out of the way.
He got his hand on the basketball. He got his hand on the basketball and he got fouled on an offensive rebound. You know, and that's a clean play because you know, 2 minutes to go, you go and commit that. I looked up a stat today. I don't look at many. Zach Jackson obviously plays the 3 spot for Leicester. Ben Mockford and Jamel Kennedy have been playing the 3 spot for Newcastle most of the season, give or take. You know, there's been and they're playing different. And together they played 550 minutes of basketball. Right? How many offensive rebounds do you think they've got between them?
Mockford and Kennedy. I wouldn't think Mockford has a load. 500. I don't know. I'm going to say 4 because it's obviously a low number.
6.
And
he's got 5. Mockford's got 1. Now, obviously, the Mockford's is floor space. He's not going to be around there that much. And he's also been spacing a little bit. And you know, and certain coaches don't emphasize offensive rebounding because they want to get back on transition defense. But then you look at Kyle Johnson, who's played 4 games. He's averaging 4 a game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like, hang on a minute, you know, there are winning play. There are people who make winning plays, and there are people who aren't. You know, and Zach Jackson at that point, Zach Jackson's not known as a great offensive rebounder. He's not somebody who crashes every time. I mean, I think I could get 3 if I played 600 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, but when it mattered, when a play had to be made, he didn't just stand on the perimeter with his hands up saying, pass it to me.
Yeah.
They went to the rim. He went there and he got the ball. And he knocked
because the other thing is, it was Whelan going to the basket. So you could quite easily go, oh, Patrick's going to make that.
Yeah. Or you just wait, or you watch instead. But you know, he did. And So yeah, so he made that play. Then
85-86.
yeah,
Hamlet misses a baseline runner.
yeah.
Come
At
the
this
other
point,
way.
Newcastle. The reason I say that they went ahead 2 minutes too early was because their offense was Javion Hamlet. And to be fair to him, he had a hell of a second half. He got, he showed a lot of gumption because he looked a bit frustrated at the end of the first half. I think he had 20 points in the second half. And he attacked and he showed he's a bit of a gamer. There's stuff about him. He's very young in relation to his mindset at times, I think. But there's something there, which he could bottle and make into potentially a winning player. But that was their offense. So he had to keep making shots, and then he was I think even Mark even had to take him out at one point, for a break, for below one of those possessions because he was out with his feet. So he missed the float there, and then Patrick Whelan basically came down and made a hell of a play. As a scorer, just a professional scorer. He drove to his left, which is where you want to shade him, leaned in, took the contact. The defense was decent and just made the little 6-footer, And that was just. And the thing that impressed you about Leicester was it was very matter of fact. They knew what they were going to do. He knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
There's no hoop ball. There's no round the back. There's no dribble. It was just, this is my move. This is what I do. Which I thought was really impressive.
85-88 at that point. There's a timeout. 101 to go. Now, it was in today's game that I thought of this, but it was applicable for this as well. Donovan Johnson leads the league, I would say, in the what was he doing there foul? Because the foul he commits here, which was his fifth, was an offensive foul, but he didn't even look like he was trying to set a screen. He just looked like he was standing. You know what I mean? He wasn't in a position to set a screen. He just was in the way.
I watched it back at the time because I had the game on YouTube, so I watched it back. And I'm gonna defend him a little bit. I think it was nowhere near as egregious as the bad call that they had in the Surrey game. But he got called. He got called up late to the screen for Hamlet. And at the point of and this is, I'm going to get into this with the Eagle screens with other games as well. But at the point of contact, I think he's in legal screening position.
But he's not setting a screen. Would be my take.
I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah,
but he was there. And what happened? Now the difference. The only thing I'd say I'm a little bit dubious about is whether or not he was actually too close to the defensive player when he stood up next to him, right? Because he was there, he got right really next to him before he was stationary. And I know there's something about screening distances as well.
Yeah.
What happened is that Evan Walsh, and this is something that I've seen probably 4 times this weekend. It's really beginning to frustrate me. Evan Walsh tried to navigate the screen, but kind of hit Donovan Johnson towards the side of his body. I tried to navigate past Donovan Johnson, but hit Donovan Johnson towards the side of his body, right? And what happened was part of Johnson's body turned. So one foot moved and the other foot doesn't move, right? Now, every time I see that happen in games, refs are calling an offensive foul as an illegal.
Yeah.
But and if I was a defensive player, I would run into the guy's hip and then go like that. If you can knock the guy kind of backwards on an angle, so one foot moves and one foot doesn't move, the refs are calling automatically because the refs aren't seeing what's happening beforehand. They're just calling the reaction. And if he's hit him at that side and he's turned, therefore he mustn't have been set as their view. And it's wrong. I think it's totally wrong.
My thing on that is I looked at him and go, what was he doing there?
He's trying to set Hamlet, I think.
The Surrey one, he's stood there, arms there, setting a screen. It's obvious what it is. And I just thought on that one, there was another one today, and I forget what happened, where I just went, what was he trying to do? What was he doing there? I couldn't quite work it out.
Well, I'm seeing stuff whereby, I'm afraid at times refs aren't, there's no rule as to how long, this isn't about this call. There's no rule as to how long you've got to set a screen for, right? So I'm seeing stuff where refs are penalizing the player as they're rolling away, as they're actually making the basket move to roll the basket. And the reality is that if you are there and you are in your cylinder, it doesn't matter. And we're going to get to this with the Plymouth game later on, the Plymouth game I watched this afternoon. And you're in your cylinder, it doesn't matter which part, it doesn't matter if you move 1 foot backwards when you're hit or 2 foot backward or whatever. It's a legitimate screen. And what I'm seeing is referees who are looking at the reaction of the screener as to the screener moving, as opposed to actually looking at what they need to look at, which is the 2 seconds before the contact, as to where they're in legitimate position. So I didn't think it was a good call. I watched it back. I don't think, as I say, I don't think it's indefensible call, but I didn't think it was a good call. But anyway, you know,
I thought it was a good call. I just looked at it and got, he's not set a screen. He's just standing. He's just in the way.
That would be in the way. That's a screen.
I didn't. Maybe I've not quite worded that properly. I didn't think that was a defensive play. Put it that way.
A basketball player. Okay.
Yeah. So nice drive by Jackson. 42 seconds to go, but it goes round the rim and comes back out. So Newcastle get the ball back and a chance to potentially tie, but Hamlet goes and drives to the basket and gets 2. So it's 30 seconds to go. It's a 1-point game. And then obviously this is the point where we've still got Thornton on the bench. So you still got Pat Whelan bringing the ball up for Leicester. He lost the ball for a split second. There's almost an 8-second violation. And I think because of that, Hamlet goes chasing after him and kind of has a little hand check of him. And of course, Mark on the sideline is screaming for 8 seconds.
I thought it was a bad play by Hamlet, because I thought Hamlet took the foul. I thought he thought I have to foul, and he didn't have to foul. It wasn't a foul situation. Mark wasn't telling him to foul, and I think had he not fouled, it would have been an 8-second.
Yeah, I think it would have been. Yeah, because at the point at which
I can't argue the call, because I thought it
was a foul. The point at which he commits the foul, and just to clear it up for people watching, because this is always the confusion with the modern shot clocks, is they stop the shot clock at that point. So it says 16 on the shot clock, and your basic math says 16 minus 8 is an 8-second violation. 24 minus 8 is an 8-second violation. But for the modern shot clocks, like they have at the Virtue Motors Arena, because they have tenths of seconds, you actually have to see 15 on the shot clock for 8 seconds to have elapsed, because even though you can't see the 0.99, the 0.99 is, or at least 0.9 is actually in the clock's brain, if you like, for want of a better phrase. And therefore, if you see 16, it therefore has to be less than 8 seconds.
Yeah, and it's not the first time. That's right, and that's why I thought I had no issue with that. It's not the first time Newcastle have made bad plays at the end of close games, you know, which changed the manner of the game. And you can't, at that point you're in the penalty. You can't be fouling Patrick Whelan. You don't get 30 seconds to go, unless your coach tells you you just cannot be doing that. And as I say, it probably took them away from the opportunity of an 8-second violation as well. So it's that kind of smartness thing, that kind of inbuilt, professionalism, knowing the plays to make at the right time that they're lacking on at the moment, because Pat Whelan's not going to miss those shots. He's already missed a shot all night.
And he didn't miss the shots. 87-90 with 21.6 to go. Timeout, Newcastle advanced the ball. They run a bit of an isolation play for Hamlet, but because Leicester switch everything, it ends up Loving guarding him, and it's not so easy to shoot over the length of Loving. So he ends up trying to kick it out to the wing, but it's in between the two Newcastle players and straight out of bounds.
Yeah, and he hasn't kicked it out all game, and he attacked from the wing, and I'm not convinced he's at his best attacking from the wing. I understand I thought Leicester defended that really, really quite well. And I don't think it's a bad play call. You put the ball in his hands, and you're looking for a 2, you're not looking for a 3. But no, I mean, it's just, as I say, it's growing pains for Newcastle.
Leicester then call a timeout, advance the ball. Thornton comes back into the game. He was the first one round the screen. The second one would have been Whelan, but he was so wide open that you take the open pass where it is, and he got fouled. Although he did miss the first free throw, he made the second, and it's a 4-point game with 12 seconds to go.
Yeah, that was game over. I thought overall, Leicester did what they do. They came out, they stuck to the scouting report. They got out in transition, scored easy baskets, and they survived the minutes without their backup point guards. And then when it came to the crux of it, Jackson and Whelan made plays, and they didn't beat themselves. Newcastle I thought did a pretty good job in certain areas of the game. They restricted Leicester 3-point shooting because obviously they'd been blown out in Leicester last time. Once Mark found his 5, I thought they were competitive. They were attached to the game. They were getting on the floor. They were getting the loose balls. And again, they won 2 out of the 4 quarters or 3 out of the 4 quarters. But they're just giving teams starts, And I think that I'm beginning to see the beginnings of a team with Newcastle. There's probably 3 games in a row that they could have won: the Cheshire home game, the Glasgow away game, and the Caledonia away game in that one. But they're just not quite over the hump yet in relation to knowing each other and trusting each other at the end of games, and making the right plays. So I'm beginning to see start of a team with that, but they benefited from not having as many players. They benefited from not having a fit Mockford Nubiaro in. Because it meant that everybody else had to play. And, Kyle Johnson, again, stepped up in the 4th quarter and made some plays and, 20 points. So, so there's a lesson there, finding 9 or 10, fitting 9 or 10 players into a rotation when you're losing is tough.
So Hamlet, 25 points, 21 shots. Carl Johnson, 19, 7 and 6. Cohen, 13 and 7 assists. Whelan, 24 points, 11 shots. 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Jackson, 22 and 7. Thornton, 13. Word for Evan Walsh as well, because you mentioned he's not really played. 12 points, 5 of 7 shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. He got a nice one early where he had to shoot it at the end of the shot clock and he knocked it down. And after then he got another 3, which he made in transition. But 2 years ago, Evan Walsh was playing at Surrey. He's playing big mid. Impressive player. He's been kind of lost on the Riders' depth over the past couple of years, but that does, you don't lose your skills. Sometimes it's just a question
not being playing for Leicester. He has obviously been playing.
Loughborough,
yeah. So let's move on to Sheffield Sharks 93, Sheffield Sharks 83, Manchester Giants 92. Oh, Sheffield wish it was 93. No Nelson and no, Cook was back. No Lee for Manchester. Manchester jumped on them early, scored the first 8 points, led 18-6.
Yeah, this was a weird game. I thought Fletcher ran this game, to be honest, from the beginning to the end, and I was expecting a little bit more out of Sheffield because without Lee playing, Manchester are a little bit more guardable than they would be if he was playing. But the tempo of the game throughout was Manchester. They were getting the ball.
It was.
They were able to attack. They were, Fletcher was able to get the ball where he wanted it to the people that he wanted it to get to. And Sheffield, stuff. Nelson's a guy you don't want to miss. On that team, with the issues that they have in relation to their roster construction. The one guy who, you've got 3 centers, but they haven't got a replacement for Nelson. And I think ordinarily, if they had Nelson, I think there would have been a game a bit like the one in Manchester early on, which Sheffield would have won 100-90.
Yeah.
But without Nelson, it wasn't quite as easy for Sheffield. It's not quite as easy for Sheffield to generate offense. And the way, Manchester are going to score the ball. I'm sorry, the Fletch, Dirk Williams, Taj Green, those 3, Nick Lewis on a bounce back homecoming in your face type of game. They're going to score the ball. And, and they did. And you just remember thinking it was at some point where Sheffield's defense was going to kind of clamp down, and they never got a handle on them.
No. It was one of those games where I'd obviously looked at the score occasionally during the commentary, and it felt like Manchester were up all the way through. And actually, when I watched it back, it was a lot closer than I had anticipated from the occasional score checks that I got.
Yeah, because Manchester, don't get that many stops.
No,
and also if Manchester turn the ball over in transition, it's not automatically up the other way because they're not fighting their way. That's not the way they play. They're just going to wait until they pick the ball out of the hoop and go back the other end and score again. It's just if you're Sheffield, you really have to batter them inside. Manchester got decent minutes out of Robertson in this game, which really helped them. And they never really exerted an offensive presence inside sufficiently to obviate the disadvantage they had at the other end with with Fletcher and Nick Lewis and Dirk Williams, who are all guys who can attack off the dribble and get their own and create for others, and particularly Fletcher create for others. And they didn't. Sheffield are the other way around. They have a solid unit, but they didn't have that creative force, and because of that, they were always playing from behind. And then at the end, Nick Lewis took over.
Yeah, so Sheffield actually scored the first field goal of the fourth quarter to lead 66-65, but Manchester got 14 of the next 19 to open up a 71-79 lead, and that was
how often has Sheffield's final scores been 66-65?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
that's the difference. That's when we talk about, if you are going to be a team which sets itself to play a certain way, if you fall below those levels, or you're playing against a team which sets itself to be diametrically opposite to you, then you've got to enforce your style on the game. I didn't watch the game and think anybody, other than Fletcher. I thought Fletcher stood out. I thought he just ran the game. I noticed that. I looked at the end. He had 11 assists. I'm surprised it was that few. But when those guys are running and those guys are scoring, and particularly Green and Williams, they become a really powerful offensive unit. And then if you're Sheffield, you're either matching them hoop for hoop, which is tough, or you're going to try and shut somebody down, which they didn't. I don't think Atiba was particularly happy with this game, with his team in this game. No. I think they weren't what they have been.
No. They made a couple of shots later on to get it to 5, but never quite enough. Nichols, 21 points, 5 assists. Ogniemi, 8 of 12 shooting for 19 points, 9 rebounds. Cook, 13. Green had 24 and 10. Lewis had 22. And Dirk Williams had 6 for 10 shooting for 20 points.
Yeah, I thought Ogniemi was good again, insofar as he's in the right place quite often. He's a good finisher around the basket. But he just said there, the 3 leading scorers, Nichols, Ogniemi, Cook, 53 points. They're all forward. They're all forwards or centers.
Yeah,
playing the 4 or the 5 spot. So where are they going to get guard scoring from? Whereas Manchester have got 22 out of Nick Lewis, and they've got how many out of Dirk Williams and 14 out of Fletcher. So it was a guards versus the forwards game, and generally, that will generally favour the guards. Generally, because if the guards are scoring, it makes it easier for the other guys to get offensive rebounds as well. And Taj Green just putting up 24 and 10 without even noticing him, to be honest.
Yeah.
Really impressive.
Let's move to Glasgow, where Caledonia Gladiators won 117-96 against Cheshire Phoenix. There was no Anderson, no Hudson for Cheshire, and I saw the score of the first quarter whilst doing the Sky Sports game and figured they'd hit a ton of threes, and then I watched it back and it was all layups and dunks in the first quarter.
The most important words in relation to this game are the first 2 that you spoke.
Yeah.
There was no Anderson.
No Anderson.
Cheshire's, they've had some funny games, Cheshire and Glasgow. Caledonia, they've been back and they're up 20, down 20, up 20, down 20, whatever. But they just got obliterated in the first half of this game, and they got obliterated. Obviously, Caledonia coming off a game which they probably should have lost against Newcastle the week before. And I imagine Gareth had been telling them that, so they look far more ready to play in this game than they did in that game. But there was never really much connection with the Cheshire guys to the game that I could see. There was no real connection, certainly, to the defense. Jeremiah Bailey, who we've talked about the last couple of weeks, basically destroyed them with his scoring from inside and outside. And that's why I say the no Anderson thing becomes pretty important, because Jamel Anderson looked a hell of a better player for not playing, probably than any game he's played.
Yeah.
But when you realize the gap that's there when you look when the other team drops 117 on you, and there's not playing, you realize just maybe how good he is. And they're right. They got Tappe, got dunks, they got screen rolls. Sloan was active, but he wasn't over penetrating, or he wasn't over attacking. And Bailey just is beginning to play like a guy who thinks he's the best player in the league, which is a pretty good thing for Caledonia. The way he's carrying himself, the shots that he's knocking, the shots that he's taking, you can see he's comfortable in accepting that kind of role. Cheshire got a little bit at the rim, but they kind of scored in little spurts. But in Austin, they got going a little bit. They didn't start Will Neighbour this time in this game. I think they started Maceo Jack in this game, probably to cover for Anderson not being there. That changed them a little bit. Ocherobi is not playing much. I assume he's hurt. So they played off a little bit. But defensively, they weren't connected. They didn't really have a plan to it. And I thought the first half, apart from the fact that, Caledonia made virtually every shot going, most notable for a nonsense technical.
Whoa, nonsense technical now. Can I remember the nonsense technical?
Right.
I do remember seeing one, but I can't remember.
Prince Onwas touching the basketball after it went through the hoop.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I call it a nonsense technical because, I hear about all the discretion referees have in the world. He literally touched the basketball. He did not delay the game. I've waffled on about this before. In the NBA, to delay a game, if you delay the game in any which way, it's a warning, then it's a technical. Here, it appears to be one of the only rules that the referees really want to interpret absolutely literally in some cases, and then not in other cases, whereby if you touch the basketball, we're going to give the opposition a foul shot. And you literally, the ball, he laid it in, the ball came through the hoop, and it's a rebounding instinct. He literally caught it, dropped it. Didn't throw it away, didn't touch it, didn't move, didn't change anything that had happened at all. In fact, made it easier for Cheshire to inbound the ball.
Yeah.
And then, and it just, I'm constantly being told that it's a game of interpretations and refs have to interpret this, that, and the other. Well, interpret that, please.
Yeah.
Interpret that into not calling it technical and not putting a foul on a player, because it's just totally disproportionate punishment to the offence. Rant over.
So it was 40-17 after the first quarter. That is the most points Rocks have scored in a quarter since the 16th of March 2010, when they
actually it's the most points Gladiators have scored in a quarter.
Well, yeah. They were Rocks when they scored the 200.
They're not Rocks now.
Yeah. 16th of March 2010 against Milton Keynes, who are not Milton Keynes anymore. 40-13 was the score at the end of the first quarter in that one.
At the end, I think that quarter, Bailey made a three when they shot the ball.
Yeah.
He didn't. They 32 points with 45 seconds to go, and I'm thinking, how are they going to get to 40 here?
Yeah. It was bonkers. I was thinking exactly the same thing. And then the scoreboard gave him 6 for it, so it said 43 at the end of the quarter. So League got as high as 30, as low as 12. I don't think there's much more to add to this game.
I didn't really watch much of the second half, to be honest. I watched a little bit at the beginning of the second half, but you gave up 117 points on the road. You weren't coming close to winning.
No, you know.
And yeah, kind of an intriguing one, because Cheshire have played more games than anybody else. They're 7-9, and you didn't start Evans in this game either, which I thought was intriguing. I wasn't quite sure why that was, because him and Austin have been playing.
I think they had illness in the camp, so you don't know what the fitness of everybody is.
I find it difficult to see that you would split those two if you could, but then that might be why Neighbour was the same. Obviously it's that time of year. But Cheshire are intriguing because they're 7-9, and as I say, they're at risk of. This league is tough. No wins, you don't get any wins. No wins for nothing. So they've only got one less loss in Newcastle and 2 less losses than Surrey. So
yeah,
they're gonna have to find a way of winning some games. And that was a kind of, I think missing Jamel was probably the biggest thing. Missing him is, you're taking out 35 minutes and 35 important minutes.
Yeah.
And the stuff that doesn't necessarily go on that stat sheet. So yeah, Caledonia up and down. Very good at home though.
Bailey with 36 points. He was 13 of 20 shooting, 6 of 7 for 3, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. Sloan with 23 points and 5 rebounds. Burns had 19. 70 points in the paint, which is the most that anybody's done for a year. It was Cheshire against the Eagles in December 21. 5th of December 21. Austin 13 of 19 for 27 points and 9 assists.
That was a double overtime game though. That doesn't count.
It does count.
It's a double overtime game.
Well, but it
count the purposes of records as far as I'm concerned. 50 minutes, 40 minutes. You're comparing apples, oranges, and Mbappe and Messi's, aren't you there? You know,
you come back to me and tell me what the highest scoring game is of all time, my friend.
Yeah, 150, 149.
Yeah.
I know, 4 overtimes. I know.
And it was higher scoring than the 5 overtime game.
Yeah, indeed. Derby
and I was at Sheffield 66, Leicester 71 double overtime game.
Yeah, well,
26th of November 1995.
Yeah, fair enough. But what I'm saying is, in order to be statistically valid, we're talking about an extra 20% of basketball.
Yeah.
So 70 points in the paint in a 40-minute game is scary.
Yeah.
That's the biggest point.
Yes. Austin 27, 13 of 19. I did that, didn't I? 13 of 19 shooting, 9 assists. Teague 25 points, 11 of 15 shooting. That is 52 very efficient points right there. In a massive blowout.
-25 as well.
Jack 18. Let's go to the Sky Sports game. London Lions 95, Bristol Flyers 60. Miller was back for Bristol. No Soko, no Oni, no Kaboza, no Quealy, no Nelson, no Taylor, no problem for London as they scored the first 17 points of the game.
Yeah. They bared their teeth, I think. And for much of this season, they've been playing with a little bit of a muzzle on. And the one thing I'll give London, I've said quite a lot of nice things about them already, but the one thing I probably haven't said is that they maximize their advantages. It would be easy to walk onto the court and throw your players out there and say, you guys are getting paid this amount, they're getting paid this amount. Please go and win.
Yeah.
But, you look at Bristol, you guys pointed out in the warm-ups, Bristol are shooting 44% from 2-point range. That's 0.88 points per possession, which is dire. Dire. It's not going to win you many games. But they've been surviving.
And yet it has.
No, yeah, exactly. But they've been surviving. Not on its own, it's going to win any games, but they've been surviving on diets of 3-point shots and shooters who are getting hot and then rebounding the misses. Yeah, so they get more possessions. So in theory, they're winning the possession battle, and they're also making a ton of threes. Okay. I thought in this game, London were absolutely fixated on running them off the 3-point line. I thought they did a great job in taking away the threes. And you can do that easier when you've got the length that London have got compared to the length that Bristol have got. But it also requires, mentality as well.
Yeah, it does.
I thought there was a focus there, which was not only we're not just going to challenge your 3-point shots. We're going to make you drive. And I might be over praising them. They might not have had this, but I'm pretty sure they did. We're going to make you take a dribble and step inside because we know that the numbers, we do that, the numbers are in our favor.
Yeah,
absolutely. I thought that's exactly what they did in the first. It was their defense to start with. Their offense.
It was,
it was the defense.
It was entirely the defense.
And the difficulty that Bristol have is that
it was the London defense for the first sort of 3 or 4 minutes or so, and then it was a combination of the London defense and the fact that it said 0 on the scoreboard, and as the clock was ticking, that weighed heavier and heavier on Bristol. Yeah,
but also Bristol just kept doing what they do, which is they kept attacking. Now that meant that the defense became very much on ball, point of attack defense. Basically the first guy with it is driving and attacking, and everybody kind of knew that. So they weren't moving the basketball around. They weren't taking up time to get the best shot. They were just going quicker. And as you say, that results in less good decisions because the urgency around it of trying to get to the rim and less extra passing. And they don't pass the ball much anyway. They're probably the fewest passes per offense any team in the league. So when you're matched up with a team that knows that you're going and isn't going to give you your pet shots, and you've got to make plays which are outside of what you've been making all season. Jelani Watson-Gale did not get a step back through the whole game that I could see. He was over 6 the game. I don't remember getting it open. I don't remember getting a look. Now he's only 5'11". He's been guarded by guys who are bigger than him, and they made a focus of not letting him do that and making him come inside and finish through the trees. And that's why I say I give them a lot of credit in relation to the game plan and the adherence to the game plan is not just about the talent. You know, the talent doesn't hold a team to no points in 8 minutes. That's not talent. That's game plan, that's motivation, that's mentality, and obviously the fact that they've been beaten by them already, and they're on TV.
Yeah. So it was,
also, but just to give, you know, I'm afraid comparing your co-commentators in this game, and on one hand I've got, you know, Lasker making that point, which I thought was a very good point, and then on the other hand I've got Rose saying that Bristol is the furthest place from Newcastle in the BBL.
Well, you know.
Yeah, apart from the place that
he forgot about the 2 hours further that he lives south.
Yeah, where he actually bloody lives. But never mind. Keep going, Anthony.
Keep going.
Keep taking the tablets.
Yeah.
Sorry, moving
so
on.
It was 7.5 minutes before Bristol scored, and to be honest with you, that was it. It was never in single figures after that. They did have a little run in the third quarter where they got it to 11, had a shot to make it single figures, and then London rattled off 22 points without reply to lead 75-42.
Yeah, well, again, I didn't watch the fourth quarter because, you know, I thought it was done. And I wanted to watch another game. It was 11:30 on Friday night. I thought, yeah. Again, it was Ryan Schmidt in his tap, turning it off a little bit. You know, you had Komagumi in, you had Welch in. You know, they had some pretty unfamiliar lineups in.
Yeah,
but what I will say about those young lads when they come in, they play hard, and their defense is pretty good. Offensively, they struggle when the young guys come in, which takes them out of rhythm. But they're not guys they're not players that I'm looking at on the court thinking you can't be there. You know what I mean? Which is good. So that they're getting some BBL minutes, and once they kind of polish up their skills and polish up their repetitions, and they're playing with the guys that they're playing, the players that they're playing with, you know, we might be developing some more proper players there. But yeah, it was it really was London saying, look, you know, you might have beaten us, Bristol, but don't think you're ever going to beat us again. We'll find out Monday, tomorrow even.
Decker with the most comfortable 25 points, 5 assists you've ever seen, 10 of 13 shooting. Effortless.
Utterly effortless. And you know, unfairly effortless. You know, really.
And he's a really everything you see and everything you hear about him, he's such a nice guy as well. It's like one of those things that
he is, but he's a killer as well. I get that, and being in part of that being a nice guy. I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's not at all. Part of being a nice guy is that confidence that you have, that of what you are, where you're at. But in relation to the level that he's playing at, he is also a killer. You know, he knows when it's his time. You know, he had 27 at Turk Telekom. You know, he knows when it's time to show up and time to play, and he makes winning plays. Now you can make winning plays with a smile on your face. That's fine. I'm happy with that. No problem at all. But you know, let's not.
I think it's more the juxtaposition than perhaps some of his predecessors were easy to root against, and he's easy to root for.
Yeah, that's right. That's possibly right.
Huban with 17, Best with 14. King had 18 points and 6 rebounds. Bell 11 and 5. Delpesh 10. 25 of 70 for 35% from the floor. 4 of 26 for 15% from the free 3-point line. Only 11 offensive rebounds despite all those misses. For comparison, London shot 55% from the floor, 57% from 3, and also had 11 offensive rebounds.
Absolutely destroyed them.
Destroyed
them. I mean, that's fine. You know, Bristol are going to run into that. You know, they're going to run into that at some point. They beat them once. They beat them at home, which you know, given their advantages at home and the way they played, they've got a chance to take them again. You know, it's a bump in the road for Bristol. But it's more London, kind of, as I say, baring their teeth and asserting their authority over everybody else. And as I say, that what's left now is basically for London is Bristol and Leicester over Christmas. And you know, if they handle business, Bristol and Leicester over Christmas, they're in the cup final and they're 3 wins ahead of everybody in the league, with 2 wins against Leicester.
Yeah.
You know, then at that point you can turn the tap down again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it gives you an opportunity, doesn't it, later on in the season to do things. So let's go to today's games. Surrey Scorchers 86, Newcastle Eagles 88. All the usual absentees. Claxon, yeah, Newcastle win Claxon. We didn't have a Bristol away from home Claxon. We should have had one of them, shouldn't we? Yeah. It's even rarer than a Newcastle win, Bristol away from home, isn't it? Maybe not that rare. Martin and Jefferson threes early on. Scorchers out to 14-5. Rinse and repeat from what you said in the last Newcastle game about their opponents starting off with a bit of a lead.
Yeah, I thought actually overall I thought this was quite a well played game, and I thought both teams are actually far better than they were a month ago. I think they both have flaws, but I think they're both on the right path, and we'll soon see that over the next few weeks when they play some of the other teams. But I'm seeing the beginnings of competence in both of them. Beginning of the game, you're always a little bit worried about a 1 o'clock tip in Friday night. You've got the bus all the way down there on Saturday, and then you've got to kind of adjust your circadian rhythms to be playing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 8 o'clock at night and all that stuff. We didn't trouble Leicester on the bus, but Leicester and Newcastle at the moment are two slightly different entities. So I saw that coming. I thought to start with, Surrey's plan was to kind of pick on Cohen, go at Cohen a little bit, and I thought we did that quite successfully early. Quincy Taylor came in and he came out after about 2 minutes, and it was all a bit. I wouldn't. What was he?
No,
hurt?
I didn't. Yeah,
at all. So I must have missed something there. And I thought they got to the rim, and they made some shots as well. But also Newcastle had some defensive breakdowns. Jefferson's left open for a 3 in the corner where Cohen and French weren't aware who was covering who, and Martin had a couple of open looks as well. And at the other end, you weren't quite sure, apart from Kyle Johnson, where Eagles' offense was coming from. And to be honest, it's been a bit of a pattern that Hamlet is their better scorer, but he struggles to get going early in games. So the times have had some difficulties. But I thought what happened was that unfortunately, I think the team with the fewest players won this game. Surrey played 10. Their bench and their various combinations struggled. Around the first quarter break in particular, they turned the ball over. Newcastle got back out in the transition, and kind of from that point on, it became kind of a nip and tuck game.
So Newcastle had a 13-0 run around the first break to go ahead 18-23. Scorchers had a 13-2 run either side of halftime to go 48-38 ahead. Spin it forward to the fourth quarter, 8:40 to go, 71-60. Scorchers lead. Cohen with a steal, pulls up for a 3 in transition, knocks it down. Johnson then hits a 3, then a drive to Kyle Johnson, then a drive to the basket, and it's 71-70. Surrey timeout, but then Cohen twice gets to the basket again, and they've gone from 11 down to 3 up with 14 points in a row.
Yeah, I thought that Cohen 3, because that came off a steal. I thought that was a big play.
Shot.
Because at that point, you're kind of thinking, they were basically matching score for score.
Yeah,
going to be getting a stop, and Newcastle at this point, they've lost 4 or 5 in a row. They're playing on the road, 300 miles from home on Sunday, last game before Christmas. You've got every reason at that point just to mentally just shut down, and if you're in that habit of losing. And I thought by making that play, I thought actually Cohen really stepped up in this game, because I thought he got absolutely they really went at him in the first 5 minutes, and at that point, they really, Newcastle don't have much interior scoring. Darius played very, very well in this game and scored. I think had 5 of 6. But neither French nor Everett. French isn't going to give them much scoring, because that's not really what he is. Everett's not giving them what they need, and Donovan Johnson didn't make any, and he's generally a 3-point shooter anyway. So it's going to be the guards who are going to have to score, and Cohen knocking down that shot, and then I think, as you say, getting another shot for, I think it was Kyle Johnson again. It kind of said we're here, and then you're into the end game, and that was kind of critical. This point, Surrey, I think they've got Surrey actually benefited from Luke Bazumbru. Luke Bazumbru knocked down some threes. Newcastle weren't guarding him. He's 2-10 for the season. He turned down shots
well,
every time.
The stat I had on him, he hasn't made a 3-pointer since September.
Yeah,
And then
you
he
know, and
went
then
3 for 3 today.
went 3 for 3, and but that meant again that gives Lloyd even more difficulties because it means Jefferson, who has 12 points in 17 minutes, he only plays 17 minutes. Then you have the whole Andrew Lawrence Quincy Taylor thing because they are two totally different point guards. No, they are totally different. Quincy Taylor is your you get to the basket, you screen and roll, you attack, you pull up, you're generally your scoring point guard. Andrew Lawrence is your orchestrator and getting everything else above. And in having to kind of balance those two. And in this game, Taylor was -18, Lawrence was +12. So there was a difference in this game. But you also then losing Wang because because he's not getting many touches of the basketball now.
Yeah.
So he has limited impact on this game. And obviously, so he's having to balance an enormous amount of different things. So one player goes up, another one comes down, and I thought that was a struggle.
The bizarre thing about it with Surrey is you always say the team with too many players could benefit with injuries, and actually they've already got the injuries, and at some point everybody's going to come back and they're going to have even more
when
players.
Theo, you get Theo and Josh Steele back, then you can't be playing 12 guys. So, but having said that, the pressure is on to win. All these, nobody's happy now being. There isn't a team that's happy now being the bottom of the league, or is just going to look and say that's the way it is. Latter years of Mersey, or latter years of Durham, or latter years of Leeds. Well, that isn't happening anymore. There's pressure on. Sorry, I'm getting full crowds there, right?
Yeah.
That's like getting full crowd. You guys had 2,500 on a Friday night before Christmas at the arena, right? They're under pressure to win. We've probably seeing that more now than we ever have done before at the bottom. Because at the bottom in the past, it's just been, no one gets relegated. We haven't got the resources these guys have got. We'd like to win, but at the end of the day, we're going to keep going. Sorry, got rid of their coach because they finished bottom 2 years in a row. Brought in another guy. They're under pressure. Newcastle under pressure. And none of these teams are. It's not easy to win because there's nobody else. So. How they bring new players in because these coaches are looking for formulas, and it's no coincidence that they're the two teams with new coaches this season. So they are looking for players, not necessarily, and they're both experienced coaches. Mark not at BBL level, but certainly at national level and in NBL, and Lloyd obviously at BBL level and high level juniors and international level as well, and they're both respected coaches. So they're going to get some time to do it. But what they're doing at the moment is they're looking for the players who can be the basis of something going forward for them, not necessarily even this year, and that means that you bring in lots of guys and you change lots of guys. Some have worked and some haven't. For Newcastle, Kyle Johnson has worked.
Yeah.
Quincy Taylor's probably worked for Surrey, and maybe Jefferson will as well. But he's not getting into spats on the internet with people from Plymouth.
Yeah, indeed. Let's go through the plays. Taylor with a 3 makes it 78-80 with 2 minutes to play.
That was a big shot because I thought Surrey were about to crack.
Yeah.
And actually Newcastle played good defense on that possession. And it moved and had to move the ball around and around and around. And eventually Lawrence penetrated and Taylor made a shot, which he doesn't only make many threes, and I thought that was the cracking point. And that was the point I thought, well, actually, Surrey are going to win this game because they made that shot, to be honest. But
the way they defended Carl Johnson for a backdoor cut suggests otherwise.
It happened twice. I think it happened the possession before that as well, and both times it's off. French is a really interesting player. He's a bit unlike anybody else we've seen in a while, because you look at his stat line today, right? It was like 2 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, and a block or 2 blocks, something like that. And he was the one who made the passes for those backdoor cuts. And it's rare that you get big guys who are that comfortable making those passes. It's extraordinarily rare that you get them that comfortable making those passes 4 games after they've started.
Yeah.
Because you have to have kind of an understanding with the guys on your team, and big guys generally don't have that because of what they are. So he's going to be an interesting player to watch going forward. He doesn't appear to be a guy you're going to throw the ball in the post to, but his kind of calmness and his ability to make those plays is something different from what Newcastle have had, in the beginning of the season. So that will be something to watch. So Kyle Johnson is just a guy who knows how to score. I think we've kind of figured that out now. He finds a way to score 20 without you noticing.
So Lawrence then drives, gets fouled, 2 free throws, 80-82 with 1:25 to go. Hamlet blocked by Basumbru. Taylor with a turnover the other way. and then Newcastle have a pass deflected out of bounds with 25.5 seconds to go. It's an out of bounds ball. It is 4 seconds on the shot clock. Eagles with a timeout.
Yeah, they got lucky because they had no offense on that play.
No, they didn't.
Was left and they were dead. And this is kind of what's happened a little bit at times this season in clutch situations. It's either been given the ball to Hamlet or it's been no one knows what the heck is going on. So Cohen tried to throw a cross-court pass against his body, and Ryan Martin tipped it, which, as I say, it could have easily been picked off and gone the other way.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would have been caught if he hadn't tipped it either.
No.
So out of the play, Johnson on a curl, little fade away, maybe 14 feet or something like that. 22.5 seconds to go, all string, 80 to 84.
That was a heck of a tough shot.
Yeah, great shot.
He's made a few of them. He seems to be one of these. Carl Johnson's interesting because obviously he was a GB Olympic player, 2012. He's had a career whereby he's been around. He's played in Canada, he's played in Iceland, never actually landed in the BBL. And he's never actually quite as such been able to kind of place his level.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
League, and you would probably say he's at the tail end. He's 33. But he's been a breath of fresh air into the Eagles because his absolute breath of fresh air. Because it appears to matter to him whether they're winning or losing. Yeah, and he has this innate ability to shoot, to make bad shots, to shoot shots which you think, well, that's a tough shot, and make them. Yeah. He made one in this game from the way, step back, the left hand dribble to the middle, step back to the wing, which was kind of a bit of an un-BBL shot for a guard, and making this shot, coach called his number and he's pulled up and they defended it as well as they could, and it's like, whoa, okay, you're here to play.
Timeout, advance the ball, 15.9 seconds to go. Basumbaru all on his own in the corner. Awful defense, the tweet from Drew Lasker said.
What do you say?
Awful defense.
I'm not as hot on that, to be honest. They had to get the ball out of Lawrence's hands. No question in the world. You get the whole game that they played miles off Basumbaru. Right? The guy, as I say, he hasn't made a 3-pointer since September. Even if he makes his first two, the numbers are in your favour. Right? I prefer Luke Basumbaru shot an open three from the corner than Andrew Lawrence had a glimpse of a look at the basket. Yeah. Particularly when you're up 4. If you're up 3, it's different. Yeah. When you're up 4. So I'm not necessarily basically what happened was this screen row in French sold out, and I think sold out and lost him, but so be it. I'll live with that. You're still up 1, you've got the ball.
So timeout, advance, foul. The last of which, the last foul wasn't a million miles away from an unsportsmanlike foul, the way he was sort of like
grab his ankle.
Yeah.
I don't think the refs are conditioned to call them. I thought it was pretty bad illegal screen calls in this game as well, to be honest, both ways again. But never mind.
So they finally got to the free throw limit because they only had one foul before that point. Hamlet makes 2 free throws with 12.3 seconds to go, so it's back to 3, 83, 86. Taylor attacks, goes for the quick 2 and got blocked.
French made a hell of a play, to be honest, because if you look at the point of, I've slowed it down and look at the point that Taylor crosses the 3-point line, French is up on the screen to take away the 3, and he's literally on the 3-point line, virtually close to it. So for him to get back, to change that shot, to break that shot, when we've all seen it before, when you're up 3 and your guys, we'll give him the 2 and then we'll get the ball in and all the stuff. But for him to get back on that play and make that play, that was really impressive. I've talked about losing plays in some of the other games in Newcastle, and that was a winning play. Yeah. But basically, that won the game. That block won the game.
It did, and then Surrey got sort of like, I don't know, psyched by it or something, because everybody just stood there and watched. And then Cohen's like, quick, run away.
We were resigned at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you lose. Eventually, it's like, whatever. And, I don't blame Taylor for going for the quick 2. It's a smart play. You're down. You still got 10 seconds left, 8, 9, 10 seconds left. I thought French made a hell of a play. Surrey have got, I think what happened was Newcastle in this game had less decisions to make, less options, and I think it helped them. basically Everett came off the bench and spelled Donovan Johnson, and that was it. Defoe played really well. He was plus 18 in this game, and he played until he was tired, and then French came back in. And you've only got and then Kennedy spelled Kyle Johnson, and that was it. So he didn't have to worry about working Mockford and Nubiaro in, and throwing other people out of rhythm. Surrey had the opposite. Surrey had, they've got 4 guards, then they've got Kyle Carey, then they've got Paddy at Wang, then they've got Ryan Martin and Johnson and Jack Donmy and Charleston Dobbs, who's been starting all season. He played 6 minutes in this game, the 10th man, right?
It's his birthday as well.
On his birthday, way. I hope you give him a good cake afterwards. And that's hard. It's really hard. And on top of that, when you've got the kind of, as I say, you've got the yin and yang with Taylor and Lawrence, who are 2 entirely different point guards. And everybody else basically splitting minutes at their position. And some of them playing quite well. In fact, most of them playing quite well. So you've got Kyle Carey knocking down a 3, you've got Jefferson knocking down 3s, you've got Bazumbu knocking down 3s. It's tough to maximize the talent of everybody, but also it can take away from kind of the responsibility of everybody. You don't feel necessarily as connected to winning or losing. So so if you're in a bad way, then you basically go with your core of players, and you cut out what I'd call the dead minutes, which are minutes of people getting into the game when you really don't need them. The teams historically in this league have won with 8 players, and it's, maybe you get your 9th player in if you've got a really good rotation, and really smart players who understand their roles. But Leicester won the cup final last year, won the playoff final last year, the biggest game of the season, and Kimball McKenzie played 6 minutes in that game. The 9th player, right? And you could get away with that because Kimball McKenzie is locked into what the team is doing and what needs to be done, right? It's fine when you're winning. It's very different to doing that when you've got you're 1 and 11. Players who are playing for jobs and playing for contracts and stuff like that. So if that's the way you win playoff finals, it doesn't take much to say it's also the way it's beneficial to kind of tighten things up when you're losing.
So they did eventually foul Cohen, who made 2 free throws, and then Lawrence hit a 3 on the buzzer, which how we got to 86-88. Lawrence was 3 or 4 from behind the arc for 15 points and 6 assists. Basumbu 14 points, 5 of 7 shooting, 3 of 3 from behind the arc. Martin 13 points and 11 rebounds. They were 11 for 18 from the 3-point line. They were 9 for 18 from the free throw line.
Wow. Well, to be honest, to lose a game when you shoot 60% from the 3-point line is pretty tough to take.
Hamlet 23, Cohen 7 of 8 for 21 points and 7 assists. Kyle Johnson 20. Newcastle were 19 of 20 from the free throw line.
That's 19 of 20, so that's the game. 19 of 20 against 9 of 19. But you also add in, Hamlet, Cohen, Kyle Johnson. That's 21, 23, 20 points, 64 points from the guards. Basically, Kyle Johnson's a guard. He's playing a little bit of the wing spot of the 3, but basically a guard, Then you got, I think Darius had maybe 10, right? They're not getting any scoring out of their forwards. It's a major issue for them going forward. They have to find a way of their forwards. And I don't imagine it's French, because French and Defoe split minutes. So it's going to be Everett and Donovan Johnson. And those guys are going to have to provide some degree of scoring, because you can't expect your guards to carry you every single game. And as I say, Cohen was the one who stepped up in this game, because Hamlet is basically going to give you 20 a game most nights. It might not be the most efficient 20, but he's going to give you 20. But when they get Cohen being positive and being aggressive and actually getting to the rim, and I think you might just get a little bit better at that with the spacing that comes from having a regular unit around them. Because a couple of times he did it with sneaky quickness and turning the corner when they weren't expecting him to turn the corner and that type of stuff, which comes off the sets that you're running. Surrey just, they're 11 of 18. They really should have won this game. This was a game that they won at Newcastle with Newcastle.
Well, I go back to, if Cohen doesn't steal the ball and hit a 3 and switch the momentum, but Surrey score on that, they're up 13 this 7.5 minutes ago, and they probably win the game.
Yeah, and and they rather lost it in the fourth quarter at Bristol as well, didn't they? When they were in the game with a shot. So I think both teams are a lot better. The talent levels are higher. Newcastle were a little bit more together because there was fewer of them. I think Surrey have to make a decision in relation to Lawrence and Taylor as to, you know, how you play them, whether you play them one off the bench, whether you make Lawrence into a 2 guard, or whether, you know, because where does Jefferson fit? You know, Jefferson's Jefferson's clearly a guy who can shoot. He's a rookie. He wants to play. He's already shown a commitment to the non-off-court battles.
Yeah.
And then so where does he fit in? How do you keep him involved? And then how do you keep Wang involved? Because for half the season, Wang's been the secondary point guard. You know, it's really a difficulty for them. I think to keep everybody connected to what they're doing. And Lloyd at the end was sat on a chair looking like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I just think it's a question of, you know, how do we figure this out? It's a figure out. Their talent is there.
I heard a bit of his interview at the end where he did say words to the effect of, we need to learn how to play ahead and we need to learn how to close out games.
Yeah, that's potentially true. Of course it is, but everybody needs to do that.
Yeah.
The question is, as I say, the way is always, there's 10 of you, so which 5 can you do it?
Exactly.
You know, and that's a problem for the coach, you know, because they're all contributing in certain ways and not contributing in other ways. So there's a lot of stuff for them to do. I still think they're actually quite good. I actually think Newcastle and Surrey are a lot. You know, people are going to look at the
records,
league tables.
Yeah,
and I think they might just sleep on them a little bit, because if I look back, Newcastle could have won the last 4 games. They could have won against Cheshire. They should have won in Caledonia. They had a puncher's chance against Leicester, no more, but they had a shot. They were up by a point with 2 minutes to go. And they beat Surrey, you know, and Surrey, even then, Surrey were in the game at Bristol, you know, and they had a shot at that game, but they just couldn't finish down the stretch.
And 6 and 7 is a long way from 3 and 10.
And 6 and 7 is a long way from 3 and 10, you know. So it's kind of trajectory in this part of the season. You want to know that you're on an upward trajectory. I think both these teams are. Whether they'll be on a high enough trajectory to catch up, you know, whether the graph will be steep enough, and whether they'll win enough games. Because I don't think necessarily, they're not saying the top 4 teams, they're not. But whether the graph will be steep enough to allow them to catch up the games that they've lost, I don't know. But I think there's going to be I don't think there's going to be any easy wins in this league going forward.
So let's go to the final game of the day. Sheffield Sharks 3, Plymouth City Patriots 3. The Patriots won on penalty kicks.
Indeed, yes, Lionel. Yeah, very good. It was. I mean, it was a bit bizarre actually watching, because, you know, firstly, I'm in the goalkeepers union. You know, the Argentinian Martinez wins it not by saving the penalties. He won the World Cup by making that save in the last minute of extra time.
Yeah.
You don't forget that's 4-3, game over, end of World Cup, and that was an awesome save because he spread the with his legs. But that's what 20 years a goalkeeper does for you. The Sheffield game actually I quite enjoyed, because it was.
Let me give the real score for those at home who were more focused on the World Cup final. Sheffield Sharks 64, Plymouth City Patriots 71. So obviously still without Nelson. A good start offensively for Sheffield, leading 13-5 after 5 minutes, but then they didn't score again until 5 seconds from the end, and Plymouth, with the help of a buzzer beating 3, led 15-18 at the end of the quarter.
Well, that's susceptible to drought, Sheffield. Know that, without Nelson in particular. And again, you know, they really, it was noticeable that their defense was far better than it was against Manchester. Different level, it was far better. They clearly had a rollicking. It was also noticeable that they were looking to go inside to Bennett Coke early again, which is what they've been doing, and had some success with that. It allows them to control the tempo, allows them to get the defense back. Struggled a bit when he went out, and again, it was, you know, Kipper Nichols was left to kind of carry the. Kipper Nichols, he was left to carry the.
Haven't had one of them for a while.
Had one of them for a while, but it just rings off the tongue. Kipper Nichols. He was left to make shots and to kind of keep them going, and Plymouth have a degree of explosiveness that Sheffield don't, but also a degree of lack of structure that Sheffield don't. So they have less structure, but more explosiveness. And yeah, I mean, just to deal with the shot on the buzzer, ultimately, it's a nonsense that I can check within 10 seconds on YouTube that his finger was on the ball when the clock said 0.0. That the refs can't. They've got 2 minutes. Refs have got 2 minutes of sitting there, standing there, pumping fists with each other, chatting to the table, asking what the football score is, and no one can just rewind on their mobile phone and say, by the way, I've got a picture here of the ball on Antonio Williams' fingertips at 0.0. That's just a nonsense in the world that we're in now. And I hope that that one of the first things on the basketball side that they get to sorting out with the new chief executive is
it's been in the works for much longer than.
Yeah, well, I hope
it cannot be too far away. Would be my take.
It cannot be too far away. It doesn't have to be for specific. It can just be for clock situations.
Yeah.
It really isn't that difficult. So that's 3 points in the game. 3 critical points that they shouldn't have had.
Yeah.
I mean, they shouldn't have had it. It's not not an opinion call. It's just there's a picture there.
Because the interesting thing is the dunk right at the end, literally, but it was
late. It was late. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. The dunk wasn't. I did look at it.
Which one?
The dunk on the buzzer
at the end of the game. Sorry, I thought you meant
the end of the game.
24 shot game.
Yeah. No, I mean that was. And there's 5 points in a 7-point game.
I know we're not the end. Yeah, I know we're not the end.
But my thing about it is, I don't believe in an error in the first quarter, and therefore, even if they'd won by 2, I would say that's got nothing to do with that because you play the rest of the game with the score that you've got.
It hasn't. Yeah, I get that. But little things matter. Little things.
Yeah, it
and
needs to be right.
We should be able to get stuff right. I watched the Raptors last year, and they played a game against, I can't remember who it was now, and Justin Champagne touched the ball, tipped the ball in on the buzzer, and they won by 1, and the whole crowd went mental. 15 seconds later, the refs had looked at it on the screen. He was 2/10 of a second late. They lost by 1. Everybody's walked out. It's fine. Everybody understood. There was no rancor, no nothing. No. That's what it was. And that to me is urgent, absolutely urgent. Time, certainly for timing things. Shot clock stuff, yeah. So that happened. Then the second quarter was very much the same. It was quite attritional. Plymouth were getting a bit frustrated because we're getting caught for fouls down low. LVC Dusha was kind of back to pre-2022. LVC Dusha, he was turning down shots. He wasn't coming off the screens looking to shoot it straight away, which meant that they kind of struggled to get the offense that they've had going because they've needed him to score. But it was an attritional game, so because it never really kind of moved from 2, 3, 4 points, there was never really that much difference in it. For Sheffield, it was primarily Kipper Nichols. But they really didn't get much out of their guards offensively in this game. And at the moment, Shannon Banks is playing as a 2. And I think he's probably a 3 in the BBL, probably a 3, maybe a 2-3. But the difference between that is 2 is a guy you're going to give the ball and he's going to get you a basket, whereas a 3 is a guy who is going to be physical, play defense, attack the rim, offensive rebound, and basically stay on the weak side, which is a little bit like Jordan Routinho does, and knock down open shots when the ball comes to him. And 2s have more creative responsibilities, which I think he's a little bit not over his head in that role, but it's hard. It's not his natural role in the league, and that's where they miss Nelson. And obviously, they don't have any real backup. They played Montgomery, I think, 10 seconds, so he doesn't count as a real backup at the guard spot, which is why Nelson's such a big miss.
There was a tweet that implied he wouldn't be missing for too much longer.
If they keep losing games,
So Sheffield threatened to get away early in the third quarter, 44-33, but Plymouth then hit the next 10 points to make it a 1-point game. So should we go to the end? Which I will confess I had to keep pausing and rewinding because of
it was going on a critical point in the cup.
It was I suddenly looked and went, wait a minute, what happened there? Because Mbappe had just that was the point which Mbappe scored the penalty. So 61-62 with 2:30 to go. I rewound to find out.
Yeah.
A great scoop. I didn't see this first time round, but I did rewind it back. A great play by Williams, 2:17 to go, with the spin and the sort of reach out,
Right hand layup. Yeah.
scoop up.
Yeah.
61-64. Banks missed, Hassan missed. 1:16 to go. Williams trying to ease Glasgow out of court, gets called for a foul. 2 free throws.
Was that the one on the baseline in the corner?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a horrible call.
Yeah, I wasn't.
That was a horrible call. I'm sorry. I thought, I didn't think he tried easy. I thought he was in a position where he was preventing him from getting to the middle. I looked to see if he extended his left leg to try and kind of, to block him in that way. But I didn't see him extending his left leg to any real degree to create contact. Because I thought he extended his left leg kind of backwards, so he wasn't stepping into him. I just thought I thought in the circumstances of the game, I just thought it was a really bad call.
Glasgow was certainly happy because there wasn't much he could do from where he was. No. He misses the second free throw. It's 62-64. Del Pesto wraps up a jump ball on the offensive rebound, so it's Sharks' possession. Glasgow misses, and then Cook commits a foul on the offensive rebound. Hey,
it was pretty clear foul. Yeah.
Williams misses at one end. Banks is what did you make of this one? Banks is blocked by Brandon, and Plymouth got the rebound.
I thought, in comparison with the call that they just made, which was the one, Glasgow in the corner. I actually thought it was probably a good no call, but because Brandon did get his hand on the basketball, and you've got to find some form of illegal contact, and because he got his hand on the basketball from behind, it wasn't like because he'd been beaten off the dribble. It wasn't like he actually impeded his progress going forwards. So the question is there, where is the illegal contact? If his hand's on the ball and he's not bumped him into getting there, the argument is it's kind of with the body down low, or if his hand's gone across the other guy's arms to get the ball. So I wasn't, I'm wholly on the side of letting the guys play in the last minute, and I thought, hand on the ball from the side, from behind, okay. I'm not going to be too critical on that one. Hell of a play by Brandon, but we know that in 80% of the games that we've watched, that will be called.
Foul, yeah. And then interestingly, Sheffield didn't foul, and then they did foul, but then there were no more fouls.
I don't know if it was a deliberate foul or if it was just a foul for everybody to get their bearings.
But at the point that he fouls him, there's 26 seconds to go, and it's almost like, well, now that you've fouled him.
Yeah, but it was a front court possession, so it was only 40 on the shot clock. And I think there was a right.
But you'd lost 11, so it would have been at 13. So you have added another second onto it.
Yeah, end of game foul discipline has been pretty awful this season across the league. Certainly across the teams that lose the games anyway. So it was a little bit weird, but you play on, you've still got 12 seconds with the basketball if you can get a stop.
Yeah, and then as we're going, you are the ref. 15.5 seconds to go. Williams out and one foul called.
I'm going to even things up. I thought it was a horrible call. I thought this is the one that I come back to with the things I was saying earlier on about the illegal screens. I thought Banks was set comfortably, but because Williams hit him on the side, on kind of the shoulder as opposed to the chest, the ref called it as a block.
Yeah.
I didn't see Banks do anything to move into that contact.
The one thing I thought it was a bit floppy. I thought it was a bit. I'm trying to get an offensive foul, and therefore the ref's gone. You're not going to like you. I wasn't convinced it was a defensive foul, but I just thought he was trying to get an offensive foul, and I think that's one of them where the referee goes.
If it's a no call, I'll live with it.
Yeah.
Right,
I'd have lived with a no call.
Yeah. But I'm not having that as a charge, as a block, because this is what happens. If you're an offensive player, you are better at this point in time running into the side, kind of the wing, kind of the shoulder aspect of a defensive player who is set, and knocking him off to one side, right? Because you're not hitting him in the chest, and the way the refs are calling things, that immediately becomes a defensive position, even if you're in legal guarding position. That's not right. You know, what they're doing is they're reffing the reaction, they're reffing what's happened afterwards, as opposed to the contact. That's my view of all this. And I'm sure I'll get my messenger hit up about
I'm sure
how
you
wrong I
will.
am about all this.
Yeah.
But it's happening too often that I'm seeing it, particularly on the illegal screens.
Mm.
People are getting hit when they're in legal guarding position, they're in legal screen setting position, and they're getting hit on the side and they're moving sideways, or alternatively, they're setting it, taking a little bit of contact, then rolling off to the basket. And the refs are calling it as illegal screens because of what they're seeing happen afterwards, as opposed to what they're seeing happen before, which is what you should be looking at. So I thought it was I thought for whilst Sheffield got the benefit of a call at the far end, I thought they really got the rough end of that call. At that point.
And in many respects, it didn't really matter anyway, because the
No.
basket went in. So the 2 points was the decisive play. The extra one for a free throw, it was neither really here nor there, because it moved it from 4 to 5, and at which point Sheffield weren't going to find that in 15 and a half seconds.
No.
So Nichols led the way, 25 points, 10 of 15 shooting. Cook, 4 of 6, 15 points and 6 rebounds. They were 35% from the floor, 2 of 14 from 3-point range. And Philip sent me a stat, which was something like that's the 3rd time they've had, 5th time this season they've made 2 threes in a game, only 2 threes.
I mean, they don't shoot many, so you can kind of cope with that. But you know what you can't cope with is what they scored 63 points, maybe
64.
64. Well, 40 of them they got from Nichols and Cook, right? And I'm sure Oganyemi had a few, and I'm sure Dalpesh had a few, right? So basically, what production of they're the opposite of Newcastle. Newcastle got all those points from their guards.
Yeah.
Forwards. They're getting all their production from the forwards, but nothing from their guards. And their guards are Banks, Glasgow, and Ratinho. And so there's some shot creation issues there. And that's the thing with having a not that deep squad and having not that and playing in a certain kind of attritional way, is that, as you say, you lose the one guy who is your key in the lock, who's going to turn the key for you. Then suddenly you're struggling to score enough points to win. 63 at home against Plymouth. Plymouth are not the best defensive team in the league. They're not the worst, I don't think, anymore, but they're certainly not the best either. They don't have a tremendous amount of rim protection. They're not particularly deep. They don't throw lots of bodies at you. They don't have that much size. Yeah. You have to find a way of, and whilst that was Sheffield's way of playing, 63 points, and particularly 40, and then you need a big game from Kipper Nichols to get you to 63. That's a major issue for them. Is that issue solved with Nelson going forwards? Yes, to a certain degree. To a certain degree, it might be but that's what pushes them over the hump in certain games. But without him, they'll have some difficulties. And obviously, you say, well, hang on, they scored 80 points on Friday night against Manchester without him. But again, that's a different speed of game. It's a different pace. It's a different level of intensity. That's not the way Sheffield want to play their games. They want to play like this. Plymouth just keep winning. PJ is in for coach of the year at the moment. And I appreciate that Andreas has got more wins, and obviously Ryan Schmidt's probably going to win everything, and Rob still remain remarkably consistent at the top. But if you're looking at a bang to your buck, a performance scores to your budget and to your resources, then PJ is pretty much there. They've engendered a very good togetherness about them, haven't they? You saw it at the end. They're happy to win. That's a big. I didn't think Newcastle were happy enough to win that game at Surrey. I thought, I thought it was, when French made that block at the end, I didn't see anybody get off the bench and punch the air. Whereas with Surrey, with Plymouth, they're happy to win.
They even got a technical earlier on in the game for something similar, getting off the bench and then not sitting down quick enough.
Oh yeah, I thought, I think about that. I think about that.
To be fair, in that occasion, I think they were told, and I think even PJ went like, sit down, and then I don't know if it was Brandon or somebody down the end of the bench.
It might have been Hassan, but there were 2 of them stood up. I did see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry. I'm like,
I'm with you.
I'm on the sort of what, there's enough going on the court to handle without worrying about stuff like that. And if decorum becomes an issue, then we'll know about it. But I guarantee no one would have even looked if ref hadn't got that whistles. So that, and the touch in the basketball after after it goes through the rim, that stuff is. I'm having a bit of a refs this week. I think too many.
What about the penalties in the?
Ref was really good, wasn't he?
I thought he
Well,
was good.
he
Actually,
was really good. The best one was the one he didn't give, where he booked the guy.
Yeah,
That was outstanding.
yeah. It was
But no, I mean he was no, he was really good.
control.
It's tough. We watch so many games, and you do be really careful because I can say that's a nonsense call or a bad call, but there's hundreds of calls in the game, and they're not all nonsense, and generally they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're looking for something to say when you do a podcast like this, and so you're looking to say something, but if they're right, I'll try. If I think they're right, I'll say they're right, and if I think they're wrong, so
Williams with 23 and 5, Hassan 16 points, 9 rebounds, Bell 14.7 rebounds. I said Sheffield were 2 of 14 from 3-point line. Plymouth also took 14, they made 7. There in his massive swing in a 16.
Mark Edric Bell, I looked him up. He made 23 pointers his whole college career.
Oh wow!
In his whole career, he's no more than 7 in any season. I think he's already made 12 this season. So stuff like that. Players developing. Finding players who've got that skill in them, which isn't kind of on the numbers. That's pretty impressive stuff. Pretty impressive stuff going forward. So no, congrats to Plymouth. We'll see. They have a spring. They have a joie de vivre about them.
They certainly do. Yeah. Let's run through the league table. It's a bit interesting at the minute because of the disparity in numbers of games played, and the fact that so many teams are within a couple of games of 500. There are teams that are sort of visually in the wrong place. One team that isn't is London.
Like Rule thinks Plymouth is. Visually.
Yeah. It's just north of Bristol.
Yeah, that's right.
London is certainly in the right place. They are in first place. They've only played 12, which is the fewest of anybody in the league, but they've won 10 of them, 10 and 2. Leicester in second, 10 and 4. Bristol dropped down to third, 9 and 5, although they were second equal, so it's not much of a drop. Plymouth up to fourth, 8 and 6. Caledonia 7 and 6. Then it's Cheshire and Sheffield, who are both 7 and 9, and then Manchester, who are visually down in 8th place, 6 and 5 though, so they're above 500, but they're in 8th place. And then Newcastle 3 and 10, and Surrey 1 and 12.
Yeah, so we're going to see a lot, and that's still less than half the season for everybody.
Yeah.
Season. So we're going to see,
and still relatively home dominant as well. If you look, London are 6 and 0, Leicester are 5 and 0, Caledonia are 5 and 0, Manchester are 4 and 0, Bristol are 8 and 2, Plymouth are 5 and 2. A lot of home wins.
Yeah, I think that's going to continue because I think the amount of games that we play this season is going to mean that road wins aren't as important. I think it was a big maxim. Back in the 90s and the thousands. You've got to you win at home, you keep your fans happy.
Yeah. The best way of doing it is to go. I always used to say 18 and 18 because it was the 36 game season for most of my formative years. And it was you win 18 games by a point, you lose 18 games by a point, and you're 18 and 18. If they're all at home and all the defeats are away, everybody thinks you're brilliant.
Yeah, and if the other way around,
you're terrible. Yeah.
I know, and I can kind of see that kind of continuing a little bit because I just think the difference when there was a 3-game series was that you had to win one on the road.
Yeah.
There were the games. There was less games in the season, which means they're all incrementally more important percentage-wise. And in relation to head-to-heads, they were always, on the line. You had to win one on the road, and I've said it before. The incentivization on the playoffs isn't what it should be. So you're not going to be fighting in the middle of March to win a tough game on the road if you're fifth to win for the difference between 5th and 6th. You're going to be trying to win, but there's a difference in inspiration levels.
Yeah, there is.
It was always when you win when you were going for the league, and I know Leicester have had this as well. You always wanted to get to the point whereby you were kind of going to break the will of the other teams, because then the wins came easier. Because a lot of the wins came because you were motivated and you were playing for the title.
Yeah.
The teams who really don't have that same level of of desperation, and once you get to that point, then you've won, you've won maybe a quarter of the games before you step in the gym. And that was always kind of the target. Well, I don't know if that'll happen this year. There's some structural stuff that we do need. I'm a bit concerned as to what we're going to see in February and March, because there's going to be not that much incentive to play all your best players all the time. You need to keep them healthy. That said, if the league is really close, the teams are fighting for the top spot, fighting for the 8th, and 7th, and 6th.
Well, I mean, they're in it at the minute. The difference between 4th and 8th is, Bristol have played 3 more games than Manchester.
Yeah.
If Manchester win their next 3 games, they'll have the same record as Bristol.
And the difference between 6th and 9th is 1 loss at the moment. So I get that. But we'll see. Oh, by the way, I'm having rather being a bit snide about the softball interview that our man conducted with Azania Stewart last week. I say that Aaron Raden's been out there doing interviews with everybody this week.
Yeah.
So I need to retract any perceived criticism there.
Have you listened to the one with Sam?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that's good. That's the only one. Because the questions are better. I thought it was again, firstly, the fact he's doing it at all is good. Because if you think about it, you think of the tumbleweed that we've heard from GB basketball. Tumbleweed we hear from Basketball England. The fact that someone's got a job in the BBL and actually sees it as his job to promote the sport, promote the team, which is, as I say, totally different to the other 2 areas of governance that we have. And even if it's a question of kind of going the full David Stern and doing all the publicity and being a face for it, that's fantastic, right? The fact that you're then able to handle those interviews, with a degree of competence and what appears to be not say a plan, but a direction, if I can put it that way. Direction forward is even better.
Well, the plan is coming in January, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've all seen plans and plans and plans. It's the aim, the getting the message out there, the getting the content out there. Talked a little bit about TV money, which I'll be honest, I'll believe when I see. But I suppose the idea is if you build something which is glamorous enough and attractive enough to audiences, and its image presentation is such that it attracts sponsors, those sponsors then attract TV money. So that's been the model of the obviously the NBA and some of the other leagues in the Australian League. The one thing I'm slightly concerned about beyond that is that part of the attraction of the NBA is that there is almost a socialist collectivism about it. In that everybody has basically the same opportunity, and it's a competition amongst markets, it's a competition amongst front officers, it's a competition amongst coaches, it's a competition amongst players. There are natural balancing factors in place. At the moment, we're nowhere near that. At the moment, we have London, who are miles ahead in resources of anybody else. And I wonder how that model is going to translate if London do what they're capable of doing and go absolutely nuclear, not just for this year, but for next year. And render the rest of the league uncompetitive. And I'm a little bit, there's a dichotomy there. There's a difference. There's something which is going to have to be looked at, and the argument is obviously, the rising tide floats all boats, and I think that's what Aaron said in his interview. I get that. I think that's fine, but you have to make sure. But the boats all have to be watertight.
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? So it's not unusual in European basketball, by the way. So
they're talking about a different model. Or it's a European.
No. But rather helpfully, the French league publish their salary numbers. I don't know if you've seen them.
I saw the EuroLeague ones. I don't know if I saw the French league ones.
The French league ones were published. It was a month or 2 ago. I put it on Twitter last week because somebody was asking a similar sort of question. And in essence, if you look at salaries rather than total budget, player salaries, Asvel have 10% of the league's budget. 25% of the. Is it 25%? I'm going to have to look up on my Twitter now. But basically, just a disproportionate amount of the money on one team, and then the next team is, I'm sure it's 25%. The next team was 10%, and then everybody else is between 4 and 6%, which is sort of doable. But the question is, that's at the extreme of it, isn't it? And actually, how big is that 4% versus everything else? Here we go. I'm trying to find it. So yes, Monaco, sorry, not Asvel. I've done that the wrong way around. Monaco is 26% of the league's total player salary budget. Asvel is 10% of the players' budget, and everybody else is between 3 and 5%.
See, and that's that's interesting. Now, my roughest of rough guesses is that London's at 50% this year.
I would have no idea, but yeah.
I know I'd have no idea either, but
yeah.
What players have earned in different leagues, what leagues they've played in, what the depth of their squad is. We know, I mean, I think it was public knowledge that Decker earned 800,000 at Turk Telekom last year. I think that was published. So, there's you assuming that they're not all taking massive pay cuts to come to London. And there might be, and then some might be reasons around that. But I still think that, in a BBL terms, you're looking at a reasonable budget for a team to be about, between 200 and 300,000 pounds. And, I think at London, we're looking at, so there's 10 teams at that, 9 teams at that, and London are at 2 million. That's 50%.
Yeah.
So it's speculation, but I do know. I mean, that's a realistic budget for the rest of the BBL teams in relation to the ones who are at least, everybody they're signing players from the same leagues. If you say, Caledonia are signing American rookies, they're signing Prince Almas from German Pro B, Bristol are signing American rookies. Plymouth the same, Newcastle and Leicester a little bit more, got their own arenas, so they've got guys with a little bit more experience. But Sheffield have gone with 8 players this year, so they could retain some others. So everybody else is pretty clearly cutting their cloth. So that's my best guess of all of it. And the reason I raise that isn't out of any type of green-eyed monster or anything like that. It's just to say that that's going to be an issue for the league to handle moving forward, because you can create as much content as you want, but if it's 30-point blowouts, we've seen what's happened to the WBBL. When the jeopardy's been removed, it's very difficult to get excited about London playing anybody, because you're expecting them to win by 20 or 30 or 40 points. And that content, the best way of putting it, the quality of the storytelling, which Aaron talks about, and the quality of the content that you can put out is, I think, going to be, my opinion, going to be adversely impacted if we don't have an element of rivalry, competition, whatever. Now, the idea is everybody else gets to the London level. Now, how realistic that is, I don't know.
Well, I suppose my pushback on that is it's not everybody gets to London's level, because that isn't going to happen. It's everybody gets to the level of the other 18 teams or 16 teams in the French league.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's the same is true in the ACB. I don't know the budgets exactly in the ACB, but the last time I saw them, it was something like Real Madrid and Barcelona, somewhere between 25 and 30 million euros. Somebody or other who was third, maybe Badalona, I can't remember, at 15 million, and then everybody else at 5 million. And it's sort of like, but that competitively as a league is pretty. Now, Real Madrid and Barcelona tend to win, but
you can get a decent team for 5 million.
Yeah. But the games are reasonably competitive. Yeah. Even given that it still ends up Real Madrid or Barcelona generally winning at the end of the season.
It's the competition in the games. Yeah, I mean, I've got no issue with the team that spends the most money winning the most trophies. I mean, that's a world of that sport.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sport. There's no problem with that. It's just it's kind of maintaining.
It's just being close enough that they're still
being close enough, and particularly in this with regard to the specific position that the league finds itself in, whereby it is looking to explode. All the things that we've talked about over the past, and I know you went to the town hall on the Zoom, and all the things that Aaron Radin said in his interviews. There is a real attempt to explode this league upwards in perception, in attention to detail, in attention to the players, and I could see it as being a holding back factor. That's all I'm saying. I could see
it's
I could see it as being
how we keep the rest of the league close enough to London with before London get to EuroLeague, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's basically what we're saying is EuroLeague is the destination for London. That's quite clear.
Yeah.
In theory, they could be in EuroLeague next year. By the way, I'm led to believe if they won the Euro Cup and got into EuroLeague, Copper Box would be okay.
Really? Well,
but if they got a license, they'd need bigger.
I mean, seeing Turk Telekom, I would be slightly surprised if they won the Euro Cup. Having said that, but
but in theory, but it's 4 games. It's knockout games, single elimination games. If they won the Euro Cup this year, they would be in the EuroLeague for next year, and their budget would balloon, or it'd have to balloon. It would have to balloon. So the question would be, how quickly can everything else happen to ensure that the rest of the league grows sufficiently that at the point at which London get into EuroLeague, whether that's next year, the year after, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't think it'd be 10 years from now.
No,
the rest of the league is close enough that it remains a competitive.
It remains a game, a game whereby it's not an exhibition.
Yeah,
it's not an exhibition. To be fair, they're not at that point at the moment. When I did kind of state at the beginning of this conversation that it was if they went nuclear. They haven't gone nuclear yet. There is another strata of player that they don't have at the moment, which they could go and get.
Yeah,
but they haven't done that yet. It's just there is the dichotomy of all of that going on in one market and all the other markets staying where they're at is a problem. If I think is a problem to the growth of the league, because basically when you're in a situation that you're trying to break into a market that Aaron is trying to do, and he's got all the experience and he's been in all the contacts, and really, you couldn't, looking at his resume, you couldn't think of anybody kind of better for what they're seeking to do, to be honest. But when you're doing that, everybody's going to find a way. There's going to be a reason to snipe. There's always going to be people saying you can't do this, or this doesn't work, or it's an American sport, or no one's going to go and watch that, or there's no point. London win everything. That's going to be a criticism, which could be thrown at them. And as I say, that isn't an issue which they've come across in relation to the models that they've looked at, because in the NBA, obviously, it doesn't apply. In Aussie, there's only, I think, 8 teams and they're all in big markets, and their model is clearly let's get rich people spending money, and if we get rich owners and everywhere and everybody's willing to spend that money, then that's great. The question is, does anybody fall by the wayside in the meantime? But overall, I thought the interviews were really good. And it's crazy, really, but it's like having a commissioner. And this, British basketball has not had a commissioner for 25 years, or 30 years, and so you can only think that
2004,
that somebody whose job is to basically put our league front and center.
With the last CEO, Mike Smith.
Yeah, Mike Smith. So somebody's job is to basically put our league front and center in the market. Whether it be stuff that I understand or stuff like TikTok and stuff that I don't understand, it's fine. You always know what you don't know. But someone who's going to do that, and they're beginning to get the beginnings of that at London in relation to the people that are turning up there and the crowds that they're getting there. That can only be great. It can only be really good. It's just that there's going to be a lot of, I think, careful steps that need to be taken on the way, not to create issues for yourself. And I'm interested to see how they go about that.
Everybody else has to run so London can walk, I think is the...
Yeah, I think that's basically right. That's very good. Are you Confucius or something? Form of, got a bit of Greek philosophy going on there. I think that's probably right. It's gonna be really interesting to see how it all works. And obviously the other thing is there's only so many British players out there.
Yeah.
At that level. There's only so many British players anyway. So maybe, if we do this creates more opportunities, and, the British players that aren't in this country, we can offer them sufficient to get them back, be it Miles Hesson or Ben Lawson or people like that,
Mm.
And then they've got to decide whether whether it's all going to be about the show and all going to be about what's at the front, or whether there's going to be a real effort to provide opportunities for youth development. And this is where, as I say, it's so refreshing to see someone come on the camera and basically, not just on that camera, but on multiple cameras. Aaron's done it, and I don't know Aaron, I've never spoken to him, so I'm not saying nice things about him because I like him. No idea. He might be nice, he might be awful.
I spoke to him and he seems very nice.
There you go. So there you go. I trust you.
Yeah.
But my he did an interview for the Yorkshire Evening Post.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, okay, that's something he could easily turn around and say, no, I'm not going to. Who are these people? What's the point? So the very fact that we've got somebody out there doing all the things that GB basketball still don't do, Basketball England, not quite the same remit, but really they don't do. Someone out there trying to look at it on a holistic level and look at it and get off not be the hamster on the wheel, but build a bigger wheel. That has to be really good. So so the only reason I went into this kind of rant is because obviously last week I said it was a softball interview.
Yeah.
And it's a bit, and you can't really leave that unsaid when he's done a few more since.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to say anything entirely inappropriate in case you get sacked. Tolerating I mean, for all I know, he might be Elon Musk. I might be getting barred from the media, independent media. Maybe no more. It's now going to be BBL. Everything's going to be BBL branded. Who knows?
Not that I haven't read that bit of the plan yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, no. Good luck to him. I say.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Let's go to the quote marks next level and see.
Indeed. So breaking news, everybody at home. Next Sunday is Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit
8 o'clock
awkward. So probably something like that, or maybe we break with tradition and do a Saturday night breakdown. And do Christmas Eve or something. Dave and I, as we've gone long, will discuss that off air. So in all likelihood, it won't be Sunday evening next week, but it may well be Saturday. But
I think we've stayed long, not gone long, but never mind.
Well.
Yeah, that's probably why, because I keep saying things like
that. So have a great week. Have a great Christmas, everybody. And we'll see you at some point next week. Goodbye.